can make a way. Hey, hey, so humble yourselves and pray and guard His Torah. Obey each day. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hoshiana, Hoshiana. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom to everyone watching us from home and either today or whenever it is you view us. What a beautiful day it is. What an amazing week it has been. Incredibly hot. And it's not even summertime yet. It is June the 18th as we're given this. So we've got 3 more days before the summer solstice and before we can officially say it's summertime. So I hope this isn't a prelude of what's to come. So anyhow, we'll go ahead and get started here. We're going to start by reading a passage out of Jeremiah chapter 6. I'm going to be reading out of the ISR, the 1998, so it'll be on page 472. Jeremiah chapter 6. Is everybody there? We're going to start reading in verse number 9.
What's the name of your message?
You need it right now. I think the name of my message is called Walking the Ancient Paths.
Walking
The Ancient Paths. So, starting in verse number 9. Thus said Yahweh of hosts, let them thoroughly glean them as a vine, the remnant of Yisrael. Pass your hand again over the branches like a grape gatherer. To whom shall I speak and give warning so that they hear? See, their ear is uncircumcised, and they are unable to listen. See, the word of Yahweh is a reproach to them. They do not delight in it. Therefore I am filled with the wrath of Yahweh. I have become weary of containing it. Pour it out on the children outside and on the company of young men together. For even husband and wife shall be taken, the aged and the very old. And their houses shall be turned over to others, fields and wives together. For I will stretch out my hand against the inhabitants of the land, declares Yahweh. For from the least of them, even to the greatest of them, they're all greedy for gain. And from the prophet even to the priest, all act falsely. And they have healed the breach of my people slightly, saying, peace, peace, when there is no peace. Were they ashamed when they had done abomination? No. They were not at all ashamed, nor did they know how to blush. Therefore they shall fall among those who fall. They shall stumble at the time that I visit them, said Yahweh. Thus said Yahweh, stand in the way and see. Ask for the old paths, where the good way is. Walk in it, and find rest for yourselves. But they said, we do not walk in it. I raised up watchmen over you and said, listen to the sound of the ram's horn. But they said, we do not listen. Therefore, hear, you nations, and know, O congregation, what is upon them. Hear, O earth. See, I am bringing evil upon this people, even the fruit of their thoughts, because they have not listened to my words, nor my Torah, and they rejected it. What need have I of frankincense from Sheba, and sweet cane from a distant land? Your burnt offerings are not acceptable, and your slaughterings have not been sweet to me. So, wow. So today's passage here in Jeremiah, as with much of the book of Jeremiah, can quite frankly be tough to hear. It's a hard message. Jeremiah, who's also known as the weeping prophet, he struggled with his own words, both in foresight And in real time, Jeremiah actually witnessed the destruction of his people. He lived during a time of divided kingdom where we had Israel or Yisrael in the north and Yehuda or Judah in the south. Jeremiah spent 40 years delivering Yahweh's word, His message to Judah. His early message was focused on condemning the false worship and the social injustice. He also had a call of repentance to the people. He continually urged Judah to walk in spirit and truth, to walk in the Torah of Yahweh, rather than focusing on their pagan religious practices and traditions. Jeremiah, he proclaimed a coming enemy, a coming judgment. After several years of proclaiming the word of Yahweh, Jeremiah, his own family turned against him. They even plotted to kill him. Over the years, he was whipped, he was put in stocks, he was attacked by a mob, threatened by the king, ridiculed, he was arrested, beaten, accused of treason, thrown in jail, and even into a deep, empty well. Such is life of a prophet, I guess. He lived through the Babylonian siege of Jerusalem as his people were led into captivity. Yahweh sent Jeremiah to a very wayward, self-destructive people to warn them of the impending collapse if they did not repent and turn back to the covenant of Elohim. A warning that they refused to hear. As with the book of Jeremiah, as well as history tells us, Judah paid the price. So to begin with, I'd like to first focus on verses 9 through 12. To read it again, it says, "Thus said Yahweh of hosts, let them thoroughly glean as a vine the remnant of Yisrael. Pass your hand again over the branches like a grape gatherer. To whom shall I speak and give warning so that they hear? See, their ear is uncircumcised, and they are unable to listen. See, the word of Yahweh is a reproach to them. They do not delight in it. Therefore I am filled with the wrath of Yahweh. I have become weary of containing it. Pour it out on the children outside and on the company of young men together, for even husband and wife shall be taken, the aged and the very old. And their houses shall be turned over to others, fields and wives together. I shall stretch out my hand against the inhabitants of the land, declares Yahweh." So, while there's certainly a lot that we can talk about just in this few verses, what I really want to point out is that verses 9 through 12 actually express, to me, with great clarity, just how angry Yahweh is and how complete Judah's destruction would in fact be. They would lose men, they would lose women, children. Pagans would come in, move into their homes, rape their wives, take over their gardens and their farms, all in the land of milk and honey, and enjoy all that the people of Yahweh had created to that point. They would be stripped of their inheritance. They would be mocked. I can't imagine how it could get much worse. So we should be asking ourselves, what's going on here? Why is Yahweh so angry with the people? Verse 13 begins to shed some light on this question. "For from the least of them, even to the greatest of them, they are all greedy for gain. And from the prophet even to the priest, all act falsely." It seems that everyone from the prophet who was supposedly proclaiming the word of Yahweh to the people, to the priests who were performing the service to Yahweh, from the leaders in the highest positions of society, down to the local street vendor, they were all corrupt. So what corrupted them? Well, this passage doesn't give us the specific details and examples of what exactly they were doing, but we know that from the whole of Jeremiah, there were many things. And some scholars even suggest not the least of which was Baal worship, Moloch fertility worship, And many times these rituals would include young maidens, that they would consecrate their young daughters as priestesses and pass them around for the purposes of who knows what. Maybe to secure a business deal. Who knows? But doesn't that sound eerily similar to some of the things we've been hearing going on in our world today? It was believed that they would sacrifice their own children by passing them through the fire, most likely after they had been abused. Horrible. All in the name for a quick, easy, and large profit. During this time, it was as if human life no longer had value except to create personal gain. People were just a means to an end. The poor were overlooked, the widows ignored, orphans were abandoned, and justice only served the corrupt elite at the expenses of the masses. When the leaders of the day, the ones who were in charge of governing and leading the people, when they were confronted, the word of Yahweh says in verse number 14, "And they healed the breach of my people slightly, saying, 'Peace, peace,' when there is no peace." Isn't it clever how it appears that they created a narrative that deflected from what was really going on? Can someone say, fake news? Let us also remember what the Apostle Paul said to Timothy in 1 Timothy chapter 6. You don't have to turn there. It's just one verse. "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some, by longing for it, have strayed from the belief and have pierced themselves through with many pains." As money can bring power, and power can lead to corruption, perhaps that's what's going on here in Jeremiah's day. Idolatry of many deities, sexual exploitation, the love of money, comfort, conveniences, the easy life rather than the righteous life. Folks, I wish I could tell you that a life walked in righteousness was full of financial security, comfort, convenience, all wrapped up into the, quote, easy life. Admittedly, I desire those things. Who doesn't? And they are not necessarily bad in and of themselves. But they should all be secondary. And we often put them ahead of that which is truly important. And we know that once that we're off track, once we're off the old path, it's often easier just to stay the new course than it is to get back on the proven path, the ancient path. Let's turn to Matthew chapter 7. I want us to remember what Yeshua tells us. It's on page 923. Hold your spot in Jeremiah, please, because this is where we're going to talk. Page 923. We all there? We're going to start reading in verse number 13. "Enter through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it." Verse 14, "Because the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed which leads to life, and there are few who find it." This means walking in the ways of Yahweh. Remember, Matthew 6 tells us in verse 33 that we are to seek first the reign of Elohim and His righteousness, and all of these things will be added unto us, unto you. Following the ways of Yahweh, the example of Yeshua, that should be first. And it should be said that of Yahweh's people that we will be called upon to make decisions of integrity and faithfulness. And those will oftentimes contradict the easy way that the world is selling us. Let us continue reading back in Jeremiah, where verse number 15 goes on to ask, "Were they ashamed when they had done abomination? No, they were not at all ashamed, nor did Did they know how to blush? Therefore, they shall fall among those who fall. They shall stumble at the time I visit them, said Yahweh. How sad is it that they didn't even know how to blush, to be embarrassed of the abominable, the debauchery of the lifestyle. They didn't know how to even blush over this. They were professional liars to themselves. They were sociopaths. Continuing in verse number 16, it goes on and says, Thus said Yahweh, stand in the ways and see and ask for the old paths, where the good way is. Walk in it and find rest for yourself. But they said, we do not walk in it. We all know, folks watching know, hard choices need to be made in our spiritual walk. The northern kingdom of Israel, as well as the southern kingdom of Yehuda, they avoided the ancient paths. Look at what we see around us. What we see in America shows us that the people of this country, they too have avoided the old paths. Much of the modern churches of today, they avoid the old paths. Many modern believers, they avoid the ancient paths, the proven paths. Metaphorically speaking, let me ask, are we Judah? Considering our current state of our world and certainly the current state of this country, you should be hearing some similarities of what we had in Judah's day and comparing it to ours. Over the last couple of years, we have heard or seen things such as churches willing to shut their doors to worship, but they're willing to open to be a vaccine clinic. Well-known pastors are writing and selling CRT-based Bible studies for home groups. Churches are having face masks created with their logos on it. They're handing them out to the children like they're Happy Meal toys. Some Christian denominations have even begun to support Planned Parenthood, blessing immorality and still covering up child molestation, and some are even laundering money. Politicians, they're creating mandates and laws in which they are exempt. The poor in this country, they are kept poor and oppressed through programs that are designed to split up the family and create dependency on government benefits for generations to come. Our children, think about this, this is horrifying. Our children at the age of 5 are taught about sex by pornographic cartoons and comic book-like textbooks. And if parents object from this, they're called domestic terrorists. Human trafficking is at all-time high. Third trimester abortions, they're celebrated. Marriage is seen as oppressive, and pornography is seen as liberating. There's no justice, but the elite, they get a pass. Career criminals require no bail any longer and they're released. However, the average Joe in America, he'll go to jail for an unpaid parking ticket. We are extorted and coerced at every level of earnings with expenditures and taxes and transaction fees, surge charges, while the two-income family struggle to make ends meet. The D.C. public servants, they leave office multimillionaires. We went from 15 days to flatten the curve to the consideration of needing a digital mark to buy and sell a hot dog on the streets of many cities in this country. The CDC, they're funded by the pharmaceutical industry. Did they create a virus through gain-of-function research and then sell us a purported cure? And as far as, quote, safe and effective goes, the CDC's very own VAERS database contradicts this statement, safe and effective. The elite fly around on private jets while peddling climate change, carbon taxes, depopulation agendas, more vaccines, booster after booster, fake meat, social credit systems, build back better, the Great Reset. They're not even hiding it any longer. The list of these examples could go on and on and on. However, the point is this. We are living in a wicked and perverse time where up is down, left is right, wrong is right, evil is good, and Babylonian money rule the day. Nothing makes sense save the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. These are not the ancient paths. Welcome to Judah. So the question is, what's happening? Folks, I wish I had the crystal ball, but I don't know if Yeshua is about to return with Yahweh's kingdom or not. I don't know. I don't know if we're about to receive the judgment from Yahweh like Judah did. He certainly has every right to do so. I don't know if what we're experiencing is just part of the cyclical nature of nation rising and falling with things like currency collapse, moral decline, corruption, famine, disease. And I don't know if we're actually witnessing the controlled demolition and the surrendering of our nation to a new world order, where this last civic bastion that recognizes the sovereignty of Elohim and constitutionally treasures the rights given to us by Yahweh. We can make a case for all of these, for any of these. It could be in multiple scenarios at once. Regardless of what's unfolded before us today, what we are seeing, we can all agree, at least I hope we can all agree, that things are very, very wrong right now. And I suspect that most likely life is going to get even more difficult for most of us in the years to come. None of the problems that we are witnessing today are going to go away quickly. I suspect that between now and the time of any potential coming restoration, it could feel a whole lot like an exile, with tyranny, scarcity, lack of modern-day conveniences, persecution, theft, robbery, violence, surveillance, ostracism, propaganda, nagging chaos, and the very tempting offered toward the easy, corrupt life. That reminds me of Proverbs chapter 1. If we would, let's turn there real quick. It's on page 728. Proverbs 1. Real quick. We're going to start reading in verse number 11. If they say, "Come with us, let's lie and wait for blood. Let us ambush the innocent without cause. Let's swallow them alive like the grave, and entirely like those going down to the pit. Let us find all precious goods. Let us fill our houses with spoil. Cast your lot among us. Let us all have one purse." You know that you're being tempted to go along when you begin to think things like, it's just blank. Fill in the blank there. It's just to keep my job. I'm going to go along. It's just for 2 weeks. It's just, I'm doing my part. It's just so I can travel. It's just so the kids can go to school, etc., etc., etc. So, what should our response be to all of this? This is not a trick question, folks. It really isn't. Because the answer is clearly given. Yahweh gives us the answer in verse number 16 of Jeremiah. Stand in the ways and see and ask for the old paths, where the good way is, and walk in it and find rest for yourselves. So one may ask, what does that mean? What are the old paths? You see, in our world today, it seems as if The new makes the old outdated and useless. The attitude that permeates most people's thinking is that new is better and the old is to be done away with. You know, in fairness, in many, many things, that's a true statement. The major problem is that many people, and I do mean many, apply this type of thinking to their spiritual walk. Many try to make an unchanging word relevant to a changing world by making it fit their views. But that's not how it's supposed to work. In fact, that is absolutely not how it works at all. We are supposed to allow the Word, Yahweh's Word, to transform our views to come into alignment with that which the Scriptures speak. We are the ones that are to change to that which is unchangeable. Therefore, I'd like to begin by looking at the word that is translated into the English as old here in verse 16. So in today's world, we all want to buy the latest, newest, shiniest, the most up-to-date thing out there. When something is labeled or considered ancient or old, then it can't be the best that there is to offer. It just can't be. Most of us, when we purchase a car or a new technological device, we will purchase the latest, the most up-to-date car or device that our budget can justify. So, this Hebrew word that's translated old paths is Strong's number 5769. It's the word olam, which means long duration, forever, everlasting, evermore, perpetual, continuous existence. This word, with the exact same vowel pointing, is found many, many, many times throughout the Scriptures. Here's just a few examples. Genesis 9:16. And the rainbow shall be in the clouds, and I shall see it, to remember the everlasting olam, covenant between Elohim and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. Exodus 29:28. And it shall be from the children of Israel for Aharon and his sons by a law forever, olam. For it is a contribution, and its contributions from the children of Israel, from their peace offerings, their contribution to Yahweh. Leviticus 16:34. And it shall be for you a law forever, olam, to make atonement for the children of Israel for all their sins once a year, and they did as Yahweh commanded Moshe. How about Psalms 41, verses 12 and 13? And you uphold me in my integrity and set me before your face forever. Blessed be Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Olam. Amen and amen. And finally, Psalm 119, 160. The sum of your word is truth, and all your righteous right rulings are forever. So this word here in Jeremiah 6 is talking about that which is eternal. Not just something that's old, but something that stands in perpetuity. The everlasting pathway. It is permanent, steady, and solid. Is that not the kind of car or technology device that we should be looking to purchase? Of course it is. Why should we ever consider settling for anything less? Especially in the spiritual. However, still for some, this just makes it old and boring. Makes it the same thing over and over again. What's sad about this passage is that Jeremiah, he was speaking to the southern tribes, Judah. These were alleged believers. It wasn't that they were denying Yahweh, not at all. but they had entangled themselves with foreign mighty ones, foreign gods, while claiming Yahweh just the same. They had also embraced pagan worship practices and were mixing these practices into their worship of Yahweh. They were doing those things which Yahweh had clearly told them, do not do. Let's take a quick look at a couple of verses in Deuteronomy. We're going to be in Deuteronomy chapter 5 first. It's going to be page 190. Don't lose your place in Jeremiah. That's where we're at. Deuteronomy 5, we're going to start reading in verse number 7. You have no other mighty ones against my face. You do not make for yourselves a carved image, any likeness of which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the water under the earth. You do not bow down to them, nor serve them, for I, Yahweh your Elohim, am a jealous El, visiting the crookedness of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me. Let's flip over just a few chapters to chapter 12 of Deuteronomy, page 200. Verse number 31 says, do not do so to Yahweh your Elohim, for every abomination which Yahweh hates, they have done to their mighty ones, for they even burn their sons and daughters in the fires to their mighty ones. Okay, so Jeremiah is trying to get Judah, the people, back on the straight path, the old path, the ancient path, once again. And if they didn't, there was a judgment coming. The sad part is that the people refused to listen to what Jeremiah had written. We see that in what Jeremiah is written in the last part of verse number 16, where it says, but they said, we do not walk in it. He was trying to call them back, trying to get them to walk the old paths. And they said, we do not walk in it. So let us consider what is said in the following verses, starting verse 17. And I raised up a watchman over you and said, listen to the sound of the ram's horn. Now, let me pause there. The ram horn is there to give warning. But they said, we do not listen. Therefore hear, you nations, and know, O congregation, what is upon them. Hear, O earth, see, I am bringing evil upon this people, even the fruit of their thoughts, because they have not listened to my words, my Torah, and they rejected it. What need have I of frankincense from Sheba, and sweet cane from a distant land? Your burnt offerings are not acceptable, and your slaughterings have not been sweet to me. So why was the judgment coming? Verse 19, echoing that which is stated in verse 16, clearly says, because they have not listened to my words, my Torah, and they rejected it. You see, what came upon Judah was a time of punishment because they refused to obey Yahweh's eternal, His unchanging word. Now we know that time is cyclical, and what has been will be again. Ecclesiastes 1:9 tells us what has been is what shall be, and what has been done is what shall be done. And there's no new matters under the sun. And Isaiah 46:10 tells us that declaring the end from the beginning, and from of old that which has not yet been done, saying, my counsel does stand, and all my delight I do. Over the recent years, I believe that we have seen a call to Yahweh's people to leave their man-made traditions and to return to the eternal, the straight, the unchanging, the old paths of Yahweh again. It is virtually the same call that we read here in Jeremiah, But my concern is this, that this call to the eternal paths is going ignored, or worse, it's being rejected just as it did in the days of Jeremiah. Knowing that time is cyclical and that what has been done will be done again, what are we to conclude but a judgment's coming? A time of punishment on those who reject the eternal ways of the Most High. If we claim to be children of the faith and that Abraham is our father, then we need to heed the words of our Messiah. In John chapter 8, verse 39, speaking to the Pharisees, and they say, or the Pharisees speaking says, and they answered to him, to Yeshua, Abraham is our father. And Yeshua said to them, if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. So what did Abraham do? He followed the law, the Torah of Yahweh. Genesis 26:5 makes it clear, because Abraham obeyed my voice and guarded my charge, my commands, my law, and my Torah. Notice that this is virtually the same command that's given to us in the Torah in Deuteronomy 11:1, where it says, and you shall love Yahweh your Elohim and guard His charge, even His laws and His right ruling and His commands always. This seems to be Yahweh's love language. That's how we show Him that we love Him, by obeying His eternal word. How do we love our spouses? By giving them what they want, or by giving them what we want to give them? You show your love by giving them what they want to receive. And the same is true for Yahweh. However, too many want to love Him according to what they want to give Him and not what He wants to receive. They want to offer Him what makes them feel good about the relationship. And they want the relationship to be on their terms and hardly ever consider what it is that He says He wants. I've heard Brother Stan say many times, just because you feel good about the relationship doesn't mean that He feels good about the relationship. So the question is this, do you claim the father of the faith to be your father like the Pharisees did? Are you following added traditions of men like the Pharisees did? This is exactly what the people did during Jeremiah's day. They were adding things that Yahweh told them not to do. Yahweh says in Deuteronomy 4:2, do not add to the word which I command you, and do not take away from it, so as to guard the commands of Yahweh your Elohim, which I am commanding you. It's pretty clear. Deuteronomy 12:32 says, all the words I am commanding you, guard to do it. Do not add to it, nor take away from it. Listen, if we claim to be children of the faith with Abraham as our father, then we need to do that which Abraham did. Yeshua told the Pharisees in Mark chapter 7, verse 9, and He said to them, well, do you set aside the commands of Elohim in order to guard your tradition? Have you set aside the commands of Yahweh to observe your traditions that have been passed down to you? What are you holding on to? Are you holding on to that which is forever, or to the traditions of men? When Yeshua returns, do you think that He will be teaching the traditions and the celebrations that many hold on to, or will He teach the eternal law of Yahweh? Of course, we know that He will teach the eternal Torah of Yahweh. Isaiah chapter 2 confirms this. Let's take a quick look. Page 414 in the ISR, Isaiah chapter 2. This is just worth looking at. Verse number 3. And many people shall say, come, or many people shall come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh. This is prophetic speaking, by the way. to the house of Elohim of Yaakov, and let Him teach us His ways. Let us walk in His paths. For out of Zion comes forth the Torah and the word of Yahweh from Yerushalayim. Many in the modern churches today are upset because they are seeing their traditional values being set aside by new church leadership, a younger generations that they're accepting things that they would have never accepted. However, what they don't realize is this is exactly the same thing that has transpired over the centuries, even the last 2,000 years. The beliefs that they're so upset about being set aside by that younger generation are beliefs that were watered down from the original anyway. How far does the watering down have to go before judgment comes? Paul tells us in Romans chapter 15, verse 4, "For whatever was written before was written for our instruction, that through endurance and encouragement of the Scriptures we might have the expectation." So, will we learn our lessons from those in the past? Or will we face the same judgment as those that heard the words of the prophet Jeremiah? The tribulation will be indeed a time of judgment. I think we all understand that. And Yeshua says in Matthew 24, verse 21, "For then there shall be a great distress. Such has not been since the beginning of the world until this time. No, nor shall ever be, or ever shall be." Yeshua told His followers to pray that they might be found worthy to escape all those things, and that they could stand before the Son of Man. Luke 21:36, He says, "Watch then at all times and pray that you be counted worthy to escape all of this that's about to take place and stand before the Son of Adam." As I mentioned earlier, history is cyclical, and with that being noted, it's worth paying attention. Please consider what Yahweh said about the fourth plague in Mitzrayim or Egypt. In Exodus 8:23, He says, "And I shall put distinction between my people and your people. Tomorrow this sign shall be." So when we consider the end times, times that are coming, Malachi 3:18 tells us, "Then you shall again see the difference between the righteous and the wrong, between those who serve Elohim and the ones who do not serve Him." So the question for us all sitting here, and those that are watching online, are you serving Yahweh? Now, before you answer too quickly, let me say that we must remember, how is it that He wants to be served? The way you want to serve Him, or the way that He has told us in His eternal Word, His Torah? Is the worship that you offer Him to make you feel better, or is it in submission to His unchanging Word? I believe that Jeremiah's call is going out to the world once again. Back to verse number 16. "Thus says Yahweh, stand in the ways and see and ask for the old paths, where the good way is, and walk in it, and find rest for yourself. Therefore, I must urge everyone, don't be like those who responded in Jeremiah's day, but rather come back to the eternal paths. Come back to the good way, the ways of the Father of our faith. Be true children of Abraham and do what he did. Don't be like those who harden their hearts, like those in Jeremiah's day, and say, we do not walk in it. Otherwise, judgment could be around the corner for you just the same. May Yahweh bless you and guard you. May Yahweh make His face shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up His face upon you and give you peace. Shalom.
Hey, hey, and He can make a way. Hey, hey, so humble yourselves and pray, and guard His Torah. Obey each day. Hallelujah.